Hello and welcome to a large number of you that have just joined us. It's my absolute pleasure to be able to welcome you all here today to this slightly delayed celebration of 50 years of women at St Edmunds College. It is of course the 8th of March, which is International Women's Day. I say slightly delayed because we are now actually closer to 52 years than we were to 50 years, because of course last year was the academic year in which we first welcomed Maggie Wilkinson as our first female student at St Edmunds. I'm particularly delighted that amongst the distinguished, fascinating and wonderful panel of women that we have this evening, that Maggie has been able to join us. That is really wonderful. I'm going to keep this very brief, but this brings back a lot of memories for me. I can still very, very clearly remember Friday, the 13th of March, nearly a year ago today, when I was sitting in my office with a few of the fellow college officers, the vice master, the senior tutor, the bursar, and the development director, talking about whether we could or could not go ahead with the planned dinner to celebrate 50 years of women at St Edmunds. So much effort, so much focus, so much emotional energy had gone in to looking forward to that evening. And I was still quite new. I'd only been here a couple of terms, and it felt dreadful that probably the first decision of many subsequent decisions that I had to take as coronavirus hit metaphorically more than physically, thank goodness, St Edmunds and Collegiate Cambridge, was the decision to cancel that dinner. So I am very relieved to be able to welcome back so many who would have been at that panel. And I'm only sorry that a year later, we still are only able to do this virtually. But I very much hope that we will be able to be together again in person and to celebrate the many wonderful women that make St Edmunds what it is. So without any further ado, I would very much like to welcome Maggie Wilkinson, our very first student, to tell us her story about being at St Edmunds.
Hello. Yes, hi everybody. I am very glad to be here. I was invited a year ago to come and I actually got on my way, but had to pivot in London half a day before having lunch with Kate Glennie to go home to California, where I am, because of the pandemic. So I identify with the master's comments. I went home on March 12th, and I never was exactly sure when the dinner got canceled, and now I know. Anyway, I was at St Edmunds in 1969, and that's a very long time ago. But it is very interesting to me that while the physical plant of the place has grown so much, and the number of people in the community, the number of students and everybody has grown so much, that the most endearing thing I keep from my time in Cambridge is that spirit of welcome, affection, interest, desire to be helpful, all of those things which over and over again in the things people have written, the 50 entries into the website, it's just exactly what I remember, all of that affection. So I mean, it was really amazing for me to be able to be there. My personal question that got me to want to take time off, which St. Edmunds provided me, it was, should I get a PhD in theology or divinity or whatever? Or should I go in a different direction, which I would put fundamentally as picking a pastoral emphasis rather than an academic one? I love the academic community and the environment. Asking questions is one of the things I feel like I can do. But I really wanted the classroom not to be the primary responsibility. I wanted retreats and liturgies and all the other kinds of things you do to develop community to be a part of my focus. So my time at Cambridge worked perfectly to help me clarify that. The one thing I would say in an ongoing way about picking a career, I had a career question when I went, but the answer I came up with for myself did not involve putting together illustrious degrees in research and all that stuff, which so many people and so many women in the college have achieved. So I went home, I worked in a campus ministry, Newman Center at the University of Minnesota for a year, but it was very early. I call it antediluvian times. I mean, there were very few jobs that could pay you even a beginning wage. So I looked a little bit at combining some academic stuff with the campus ministry stuff. But again, nothing was emerging right then. So I went to law school. And I was thinking, how is it that I haven't really spent time at St. Edmunds, particularly since I was there a long time ago? And I think it's because I didn't stay in the academic groove. I went to law school. Of course, that is major academic endeavor. I worked, I got married, I had a family. I've been involved with boards and boards of the Catholic and interfaith and ecumenical institutions like the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley. So I've done different things that are interesting, and Cambridge was part of all that because I got so affirmed as a person, and that my sense of trying to do something like I was talking about was received so well in the St. Edmunds community. But anyway, I had written one of those pieces, a beginning piece that that are on the website for the Year for Women, and I didn't want to repeat any of that, and I'm honoring the 5 minutes, but I did have a great time, and I'm so glad that you're able to do this. Zoom is a lot better than nothing, and certainly when you live in California.
Margie, thank you very much indeed. I mean, it really is. I don't know, we've got over 40 participants on the line, and I'm sure that they are all finding it, I think emotional is the right word. Women have achieved so much in St Edmunds, and you are in many ways where it all began for our students. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'm glad that you've made it to the call, even if you couldn't make it to the dinner that never happened last year. So thank you, Margie. And if I could move from somebody who nearly came to the dinner to somebody who did make it to college and then couldn't leave. Jane Ross, it was delightful to get to know you very briefly and with far too little time this time last year when you did make it to St Edmunds for the dinner and then couldn't actually get home afterwards. I really hope that you enjoyed that period back in your college last year, although not the most enjoyable time to be anywhere. But I wonder if I could pass over to you for your reflections. Jane read social anthropology, a PhD, and matriculated in 1982. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Master Catherine. What a wonderful thing we have achieved at St. Edmunds to have a woman master. I am thrilled about this. When I came to St. Edmunds, I enjoyed the men, but I sure did enjoy my women colleagues there. And hello, everyone. I want you to know, although I did not get to the dinner, I am certainly at the St. Edmunds Women's Lunch today because it is 12 o'clock noon here at my place in Western Canada. And I am just more thrilled than I can tell you how to be here and to share a little bit of the meaning that St. Ed's and Cambridge has to me. It was 1 year ago tomorrow that I left for UK after the preparations of coming for the dinner, and was that wonderful feeling that I always get, and I've been fortunate to go back to St. Ed's in Cambridge many times, but that feeling of being on the bus from Heathrow to Cambridge and wondering what's going to happen to me here now, who am I going to see of the people that I respect and love so much, and who of the people that have gone on before are no longer here, and what will I learn? So I was just thrilled by that caption about igniting conversation and opening new doors for this bit of time together. So elder women and younger women, it's really lovely to have this community, and we know how hard you folks there work to keep, and what new pioneering efforts you're making to make the worldwide community come alive and connect again together. I am so profoundly grateful for my time there. It separated me out, I guess, in a way. I've always been separated out in my life. I feel like I was a tall redhead, and my dad would always say, oh, he could see my head above everybody else's, because I was the tallest girl in the class, the tallest wherever. But I really struggled intellectually, not academically. I never struggled academically, but I struggled intellectually to respond to my calling that I felt very deeply within. And I could not find the intellectual tools. I had a master's, I had a bachelor's, and I was up country West Africa one night, and I had this dream about Cambridge. I should go to Cambridge, and it was such a surprise to me to think that. So I want to concentrate just for a moment on these special attributes of Cambridge and how it has been for me. And first of all, it's that deep, deep sense of place, that institutional and historical connection to the past that is so visible in the buildings and in the thought ways and in the seriousness with which I found my tutor, my supervisor, the people around me, made me hone in deeply to my own intellectual path. And in those sometimes solitary days, it was with the women, and I want to just name some of those women. Some are no longer here, but along with the men as well, but Annette Elsmore, Bernadette O'Flynn, maybe she's here today, Sybil Thornton, the master's wife, Maureen Laws, Celia Brading, a fellow's wife who my tutor, and they were so good and helpful to me, Kate Weiner, Geneva Mallier, and others. I'm sorry if I left anyone out. So that historical space and that deep connection and that sense of breaking through with each other. And I've thought about that so much during these COVID times, that we really are breaking through with one another as our known conventions around us break apart. Kind of like Margie, I guess. I had thought to do more academic stuff after, but I haven't. I've done lots of writing, lots of publishing, lots of deep intellectual stuff, and I really have become a specialist in community education and community engagement here where I work in a 500-kilometer wide region where our emphasis is on understanding culture, creativity, and place. And I cherish those tools that I got there with you, and they've just been lifelong, life-wide with me, and I know they will continue. And I have done my very best to encourage younger women to think about their vocation, their calling, even amidst this complex world, but not to be shy in thinking of simple words like calling, and they sound rather religious, but they're just so big and so wonderful. I think that's up my 5 minutes, but I want to also emphasize that my thesis was called Musu's Choice, and that stands for Musu, the women of West Africa, primarily of Sierra Leone and the Mandingo group. And I am really happy for the fact that we're coming around now to recognize the power of those women and not see them as just something to study, but as I found them just so integral in my life force and what I've been able to do. Thank you, St Edmunds College, for this wonderful event, and love to each one of you. That's me.
Jane, thank you very much. I mean, some of the words you've been using are used so often on International Women's Day, but because they are so incredibly important, that sense of encouragement, whether it's women encouraging women, he for she campaign, or indeed a she for he campaign as well, but also that need for authenticity and proper integration. Thank you very much, Jane Ross. Moving to another Jane, who probably needs no introduction at all to any of you. Jane Lucio will probably be known by everyone on this call as somebody who is always thoughtful and for several decades has been absolutely core to helping everyone in St Edmunds make sure that this stays one of the friendliest colleges in Cambridge. I've certainly been, when I was new, and indeed up until today, a beneficiary of Jane's peculiar warmth and kindness towards each of us and the way she manages to see everyone as an individual. Jane.
Thank you, Master. I feel honoured to be included amongst you all, being a non-academic myself. While preparing for tonight, I made notes to trigger memories, and I asked myself two things. What did I make of St Edmunds? And what did St Edmunds make of me? My association with the college comes in 3 stages, touching different parts of my life. I grew up in a village nearby, and although my father and my grandfather were Cambridge graduates, not many girls had that choice. In our family, we were encouraged to do other things, and for me, that was ballet dancing. Teaching ballet filled the afternoons and evenings, leaving mornings free to do those other things. The only progressive view my school had was to teach us to touch type and prepare for the gap between leaving school and settling down into married life. By using those skills, I was given the chance to work part-time in the college office when Canon Sweeney was master in 1967. I was 17 years old. The secretary was leaving and had been told to find someone. She introduced me to the bursar, and who he thankfully approved, and I started work the very next day. St Edmunds took a gamble on me, and I thrived, running the college on 3 mornings a week, from porter's lodge to master's secretary. I typed on a manual typewriter, using correcting fluid to fix the typos on the top copy and the carbon copy. I handwrote the dinner seating plans and the place name cards in italic script. I typed the Friday night menus, the dinner menus, onto duplicating skin, typing through a thin film on backing, which was hand-turned on an ink drum to squeeze the words onto the menu cards. A single mistake, and I was back to square one. The master was always on my side. One evening I typed leek soup with an A, L-E-A-K soup. His guest pointed this out, to which the canon replied, "Oh, don't worry, that's just Jane testing us to see if we're still awake." Canon Sweeney was dedicated to the college. He coped with the transition from an all-male Catholic community to a college admitting female students and married fellows. When asked what he should do with the wives, his instant reaction was make them members, of course. His mastership set the path to the inclusive approach you find in college to this very day. There are stories of his kindness, generosity, and dry sense of humour. He loved to tinker with his motor car, and one weekend, wearing a boiler suit covered in grease, lying on the floor beneath the motor, he heard a voice asking for directions to meet the master. Without batting an eyelid, he said, "Oh, please wait in the CR, and I'll go and find him for you." He shot upstairs, got changed, and returned to greet that visitor who didn't realise that was the same man. On another occasion, a child of one of the married couples was born with defective hips babies sometimes have, and had to be put in plaster for many weeks. When Canon Sweeney saw the lively toddler confined to the cast, he made a wooden trolley on wheels so that child could propel itself across the CR at great speed. At that time, there were about 40 students, many of whom were Catholic priests, and there was an order of German nuns, whose vocation was to look after the priests of St Edmunds, doing the catering, the laundry, the cleaning, and their own praying. They also managed a kitchen garden, which supplied the herbs and vegetables of the meals they lovingly prepared. A local homeless man was taken on to help with weeding, Herbert the Gardener. He'd first been receiving hot meals from the back of the kitchens with the spare food left over from the evening dinner. This was allowed in those days. And when Herbert fell ill, the master wrapped him in a blanket and said, "Come and sleep in the CR until you're well." Well, anyway, that early period for me ended in 1970. The college expanded, needed a full-time secretary, and I settled into that married life. The second stage came 20 years later. I was looking for a full-time job, and by luck, my old job was vacant. I sat down at the desk and carried on. Office machinery had improved. There was an Apple computer with an 8-inch screen. Student numbers had grown. The German nuns had gone. General housekeeping was run by Sylvia, a formidable woman who knew everything about everyone and could be heard approaching by the jangle of her enormous bunch of keys. There was a vibrant multinational student community. They held their first summer event prior to any May balls, full of fun and freedom, food and fizz, without any security fences. It was one big party that lasted all night long. Well, that stage also came to an end, and I left once more to take up a job in the commercial world. My third return to the community of St Edmunds was in the early 1990s as the wife of a fellow, my new husband, Paul. Paul later became master in 2004. And my connection with the college was cemented when I was formally admitted as a senior member, a continuation of that inclusive approach. So what did I make of St Edmunds? It was meant to be my safe haven, where warmth oozed out of the walls. And what did St Edmunds make of me? The trust it showed in me is mirrored in the respect and love I hold for the college. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Jane. A safe haven. Hopefully that is a way that we can all still appreciate St Edmunds, no matter when we have attended. Moving on to Geeta. Geeta has joined us today from India, and so it's very much later in the evening. In fact, Geeta, I'm not even sure whether technically it is International Women's Day still for you, but thank you very much indeed. And tell us about your experience of being a fellow at St Edmunds, but perhaps also some of the work that you do on the Tigris program in India.
Thank you, Master. There aren't many plant scientists on the lovely Mount Pleasant Road, and fewer still as you amble into St Edmunds. But you know, this college is exactly where, and you remember it, Catherine, this is exactly where I picked up the shovel for the first time, despite being a botanist for almost 2 decades. Well, the fact is, as you just rightly said, I work at the India-UK interface on a program called Tigris, and much of my research is limited to the laboratory, as with most scientists. And within high performance, computing clusters, we are investigating floral chemistry, food security with legume crops, millets, and algae, trying to understand photosynthesis and plant communication. But the Eddie's plantation drive the pre-pandemic winter, that was when it turned me into the resident expert in horticulture. And all of us together, I remember you were the one who started it out, and we went on with the plantation drive to help the gardeners, and how keenly we were deliberating planting depths for daffodils, distances between snowdrops, and apprehensions of squirrel gate. I don't know if it happened, because then the pandemic struck and we all got separated. Socially distanced is a really hard word. It's a matter of pride for me to be here tonight on the eve of the International Women's Day, celebrating 50 years of women, and listening to the first female student, and Jane and Lucio and Ross, both of you. I am a lecturer at the Department of Plant Sciences. I also hold a joint appointment in India. In fact, this joint appointment was one of the main reasons for me joining St Edmunds, because EDS has the largest and most diverse international contingent among its college members. So much of my work in the Tigris program, which is transforming India's green revolution for research and sustainable food security, involves research, training, and outreach at the interface of both India and the UK. And the College Development Office, it has been vital in linking me to our extensive network of alumni, many of whom are now leaders of science policy, not just in India, but all over the world. So leaving work aside, I think it's been the connecting with women of EDS the Edwinas, that has been a journey of discovery for me. And the best fun part has been that it's been so full of surprises, deep empathy, great camaraderie from yourself, Master Catherine Arnold, as well as to, all the way to Angela Coltman, Judith Bunbury, Helen Mason, Tina Barsby, Susan, Anna, Olivia. We've got our own ladies club, a Ravensburger Puzzles club also, especially with Judith. And that was at the college, and we used to be meeting every evening before the pandemic, trying to work out strategies for 1,000-piece puzzles and so on. We even had an impromptu global women's breakfast in the dining hall to just celebrate the UN Women's Day last year. Everything without thinking, without even planning. It just happened. We talked about it and it happened. Well, in the end, I just want to say that St. Ed's is where we come together across all sorts of boundaries, enjoying truly transdisciplinary sessions at our research salons. I presented my work on food security in 6 minutes flat to an audience of theologians, lawyers, entrepreneurs, engineers, FB data analysts. And we actually had a very lively discussion afterward. It was so good. It was better than many talks that I've given outside of, among plant biologists, essentially. I do pride myself at being a successful woman in science, but I'm also a wife, I'm a mother, and I'm a daughter-in-law. And much of my success on this joint program between 2 countries, 2 continents, it would not have been possible without the socio-cultural support that I have had at St. Edmunds and I continue to have and enjoy. Eds is one of the few colleges at Cambridge that are family inclusive and positively enabling. My whole family, we live at Jeffrey Cook family apartments on the college grounds. My children love the college and they miss the college right now. They attend garden parties. They got invited by CR to pre-exam socials, joint festivities, so much more. St. Ed's is where my usually reserved 5-year-old boy found his best friend in an Australian Aboriginal child of his own age. I don't think we'd ever have met outside on this planet if it had not been at St. Ed's. And St. Ed's is where my 82-year-old great, grandmother-in-law, she attended formal hall, and she was seated next to senior fellows of the college, and she still fondly recalls her very first visit outside of India to a country, to a place, to a city, a town, a university town that is really beyond everything else I can't describe in words. St. Edmunds is my home away from home. No wonder it's called the College with a Heart. And that's all that I have to say. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Geeta, thank you very much indeed. And I think you've set out what so many of us find here, which is the way that St. Edmunds attracts people from all over the world, relationships, conversations, interactions that we would never have imagined being able to have if we weren't lucky enough to be here. I also have to say, Geeta, talking about your plant science reminds me of when we first met. And an incredibly embarrassing moment, which just goes to highlight how ignorant we all are when we come to St. Edmunds and how much we can grow. When you told me that your area of research was in Robisco. But unfortunately, as those of you who know about the hall, it's quite hard to hear. And I heard Geeta say that your area of research was in the hibiscus. And thus followed a very bizarre conversation in which I told you how much I loved the hibiscus. And you must have thought I was extremely bizarre to love a starch transformative protein. Thank you very much, Geeta. I'm going to move on now to one of our very recent graduates, Jordan Moxley, who did a management MPhil and matriculated with us in 2018. Jordan.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, especially on International Women's Day. So hi everybody, and thanks for joining. I'm a doctor and a health services researcher at the Healthcare Improvement Studies Institute in Cambridge. And I attended Eddie's about 2 years ago now to study management. And I guess I could say it's fundamentally changed the trajectory of my life. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now had I not come to St. Edmunds. And if I kind of look back maybe about 3 years ago to when I applied, I see my application was somewhat of a dream and like a hope. So at the time I was working as a year 1 doctor on a very busy respiratory ward in an inner city hospital in Birmingham. And I just never envisaged that this, application would end up leading to me coming to St Edmunds. And so when I received the offer, it was like, oh my goodness, no, I actually have to make this decision. Do I step away from clinical medicine for a whole year to do something completely different, start a new adventure, or not? And I'm so grateful that I took that risk. It gave me the opportunity to learn more about how large organizations such as the NHS work and how they operate, how you can strategize and influence change from the ground level, even if you don't necessarily feel like, you're empowered to make any change, which is, I guess, a kind of feeling shared amongst junior doctors when they do work in such a large organization. So that was one thing that was, really amazing about being able to come to St Edmunds. And if I was to try and explain to you guys all of the amazing experiences, I'll probably be here for like an hour. So I'm going to try and summarize it into what I think are the 3 Ps of what makes Eddie's so special. So that's the people, the place, and the possibilities. So, firstly, the people, they are incredible. They are so friendly. They are from all over the world, studying lots of different types of things, and such a diverse community. You just feel very much at home at Eddie's. And I've made a group of friends there that will be friends of mine for life. And I'm really, really grateful to have them. And then secondly, the place itself. Eddie's is just a beautiful college. So, when you're studying and, you might be studying for exams, it's a bit stressful. You want to be in a place that's very peaceful, and it feels very, very peaceful at Eddie's. And it's obviously, it's beautiful to look at. And then I think it's kind of underrated in Cambridge in general. And when people actually come out to the Hill colleges and actually see what it's like, they're really pleasantly surprised. And then finally, I guess the 3rd P, the possibilities. And I got to do so many new things while I was at Eddie's. I rode, which I always wanted to do. I thought that's a very Cambridge thing to do. And I participated in several bumps competitions, which were really, really fun. Played mixed netball against other colleges. That was great. Loads of different formals went to, the balls. And then obviously the opportunity to study at the business school was incredible. And I guess as well, since leaving Eddie's, I had to go back to finish my 2nd year of doctoring in Birmingham, but I have taken the first opportunity to come back to Cambridge. So I'm now living back in Cambridge, and I'm doing work that I wouldn't have been able to do had I not come to Eddie's for that year. So yeah, to conclude, I think the thing that makes Eddie so special is the combination of those 3 Ps: great people, great place, and great possibilities.
Jordan, thank you so much for framing that so incredibly eloquently and well. What you haven't also said as an attribute of St Edmunds women is obviously their modesty, as you casually dropped in that you played mixed netball without telling anyone that actually you are an England ex-netballer. So, and indeed a blues netballer, I believe, as well. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you.
From one fabulous sportswoman to another, Regan Hamill, can I introduce you? You're medical science MPhil matriculated in 2017, and you're now working towards your PhD, rowing in the lightweights and also a blue.
Thank you so much for the introduction. It is an absolute honor to be here with all of you and to have been asked to sit on this panel among so many amazing women. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. I thought I would just start off with a little bit of context about who I am and how I came to be here at Eddie's. So I grew up in rural Canada, in northern Saskatchewan specifically. And in addition to this really unique setting, if anyone's ever been to Saskatchewan, my childhood, I think, was also a bit peculiar because of the parenting techniques that I was subjected to by my parents. They kept my sister and I really, really busy, I think as a way of keeping us out of trouble. And so by the time I was 14 years old, I of course went to school, but had also been officially employed by people other than my parents as a waitress, as a cook, as a cashier and also as a gardener. And on top of all of that, I trained 12 times a week for swimming. So in keeping us so busy, I think my parents, and maybe they had this in mind, they taught my sister and I these really indispensable life skills. And it was because of those life lessons like time management and commitment and perseverance that we were able to I guess, leave Saskatchewan for a time and move on to higher education. But it wasn't just that, it was also the fact that my sister as well, we were able to, we received really generous funding from charitable organizations who paid our way to go to university. And that was, yeah, just incredible. I'm very lucky to have that. And of course, without that step, which landed me at McGill University, I would have never made it here to Eddie's and to Cambridge. And here I am again. And thanks to more charitable organizations, I have made it halfway around the world to study a PhD in clinical neurosciences. And that's how I got here to Eddie's. So I have to say, when I heard that this college I would be attending was something like 75% male, I was definitely a little bit worried that I was going to be walking into some kind of boys club. But I have to say, and I think this has been repeated so many times during this webinar already, but Eddie's was absolutely not like that. It has been such a positive and welcoming environment. And I have made these lifelong friends from all over the world. I would have never had opportunities to connect with these different people. And it's just been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed, expanding my knowledge beyond life sciences as well through both seminars, but also just social activities hosted by the colleges and at formals. You sit down next to somebody studying something completely different, and you learn so much every day, and it's amazing. I'm also happy to say that I was able to give back to the college by being involved in several college committees, including being the welfare officer for a year. And of course, I have to mention that Eddie's is where I was first exposed to rowing. And so for 2 years, I was so lucky to row with the Eddie's Women's Boat Club and to do bumps and just wake up in those early mornings. And, you really make some unique kinds of friendships that are only born through those shared struggles. And I'm sure anyone who's rowed here can understand that. But yeah, those were really great times. And then last year, with the generous support of the college, I was able to trial for the boat race and race against Oxford. And I'm very happy to say that we won. And of course, I'm very happy that we won, but mostly because it was the last weekend before the national lockdown. And so we really celebrated, and we celebrated maybe enough to last us a whole year, but it must have been so sad to be Oxford on that weekend. But I think beyond rowing, my proudest Eddie's moment was definitely witnessing the appointment of Catherine, the college's first female master. It's such an inspiration. And to conclude, I guess I will be graduating this year. And while it is really sad to leave Eddie's, as a student, I am just so happy to have had this time here, and I will never forget the generosity that enabled my current lifestyle and my future career, and I absolutely intend to pay it forward. So yeah, thank you very much.
Regan, thank you very much indeed for your inspirational story and reminding us of some of the things that undergird all of our success, time management, dedication, focus, and that desire that you bring through so strongly to give back. Thank you very much indeed. And moving on to Abisola Babalola. Abby, you're studying public policy MPhil at the moment, and you matriculated this year. What an extraordinary year to join our community. Over to you for your thoughts.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And thank you all so much for the opportunity to be a part of this event. First, to celebrate 50 years of women at St Edmunds College and to celebrate International Women's Day as well. My name is Abisola, and I joined St Edmunds last year to pursue an MPhil in public policy. So St Edmunds is my current home. I'm here right now. In many ways, having a safe, hospitable, and vibrant community for a student like me to learn, grow, and achieve her best potential is not a given. In fact, in many contexts, it's still thought of as a privilege for the girl child or women in general. I come from a country where just 5 days ago, 279 girls were abducted from a public school whilst pursuing the very foundations that could one day make them students at the University of Cambridge and, if very lucky, members of St Edmunds College. So when I reflect on my experience as a student, a college representative, and a mini staff member of this college, I do so with a deep sense of reverence and thankfulness for a safe, vibrant, and positively challenging environment that gives women, particularly women of color from different parts of the world, the opportunity to feel at home and be part of a strong community whilst pursuing their studies. I'm grateful for a college with a female master, Catherine Arnold, who has gone beyond her office walls to share such depth of knowledge and expertise with students, and has quickly become a symbol to many of us of what it means to dare to dream, and not only that, but to take the unconventional steps that are necessary for the fulfillment of our dreams. I'm blessed to be working on a remarkable team of knowledgeable, diligent, and high-spirited development office staff led by Kate Glennie, who has consistently shown such great level of thoughtfulness and kindness, even while pushing through the busyness of her work schedule. I've been privileged to work with some brilliant women on the college CR, such as the current women's officer, Matavori, or even the recent past welfare officer, Linnea Vogel, whose dogged commitment to the welfare of students remains almost unbeatable. I've also had a wonderful female college tutor, Charlotte Kenchington, who has played a phenomenal role as a first point of call in challenging times, as well as our senior tutor, Judith Bunbury, who always has a wonderful smile and something cheerful to say every time I come across her. It's easy to take this community of strong and graceful women for granted and to reflect on my time here as something natural, common, or available to all. But I know far too well from my context and my experience that these things aren't so everywhere. The one thing I've come to deeply appreciate and respect about St. Edmunds is the kindness and the community spirit that I found in most people here. So I guess the joy of my belonging to this college is not a function of its buildings or any of its fancy historical spaces, but of the people and of the kindred spirit I come across every single day. From the college tutors to the maintenance team, to the kitchen staff, to the CR, other main college staff, and the students, St. Edmunds has proven itself to be a wonderful home away from home for its female students 50 years on. It's my hope that we'll continue to do all we can across genders and across both student and staff to build on this community spirit and to always listen, encourage, and help one another, especially in challenging times as this. I hope St. Edmunds will continue to provide the best possible community and learning experience for all women from everywhere who dare to walk through its doors. Thank you very much once again for having me, and happy International Women's Day to all.
Abisola, thank you very much indeed. And of course, you've got such a wonderful perspective, being both a current student, but also somebody who is working part-time with the Development Office. So thank you very much for your reflections, in particular, reminding us what we all take for granted, but shouldn't. Putting us back into a global context on this day where we celebrate and think of women around the world, but also that spirit of reverence, the need to be a kindred spirit to each other and to look out and help each other. Thank you very much, Abisola. And now, very much not least, although being last, Diana. Diana is our Vice Master and has been a Fellow of St Edmunds since 2003. Diana, by virtue of being slightly late, which was expected and unavoidable, you have drawn the short straw and had to go last. A daunting prospect after some absolutely fascinating speeches, but really looking forward to hearing your view on women at St Edmunds.
Thank you, Catherine, and I apologise for being late. One of the things that I do is that I'm a governor of the local mental health trust, and it was a big meeting about NHS reorganisation, which right now you know, what does the NHS need right now? It needs a reorganisation. But there we are, it's going on. So many apologies for being late. It's been really interesting picking. I did hear some of you, and apologies to the people that I didn't. But I think a lot of what people have said really resonate with me. I think the things that I feel passionate about, that we try and strive to achieve at St Edmunds, are the widening participation agenda, and also particularly encouraging women, and today of all days, women from all around the world, to come to St Edmunds. So I'm a doctor. I've been a doctor all my life. My father was a doctor. My mother was a midwife. It all sounds terribly conventional. But my father, my father's parents were very poor. They worked in the mills in West Yorkshire, and he won a scholarship to the local grammar school and was picked up by an outstanding teacher who noticed that he had some academic talent. And then he was encouraged to go into medicine, and he got a place in medical school. And it really, really upsets me, thinking about widening participation projects across the university, that we are still dependent on those outstanding secondary school teachers in quite a lot of schools to pick on students and say, yes, you can do it, the sky's your limit. And so I think, you know, that was a long time ago, and we're still 75 years later, we're still having to rely on those people. Thank goodness that they're there, but it says something bad about the educational system in the country, I'm afraid. So my father went to medical school in 1945 and graduated in 1951. And in his year at medical school, 50% of the year were women. And that's because, for obvious reasons, really, when you think about it, that an awful lot of those bright young men who traditionally went into medicine were still in the armed forces and overseas. So I have his graduation booklet, 50% of them were women. That number was not achieved between 1951 and about 2011. So the year after, the number of women admitted to do medicine was way down. So I went to medical school in 1975, and 12.5% of my year were female. And it's taken us that long to build up to equity. And excuse me, across the country, there are now slightly more female medical students than male medical students. But overall, it's around 50-50. And I think that's an amazing achievement. And it's something that at St Edmunds, we really are looking to encourage women in medicine. I'm absolutely delighted that we managed to get the graduate course places. And it's fantastic to have graduate course medics in the college. And just thinking about what Reagan said about, she was a bit concerned that 75% of the students were men. I think we single-handedly addressed quite a bit of that by getting the graduate course, because the graduate course is very, very heavily female dominant. So that actually did do something for the male-female ratio of students in the college. So I think it's a fantastic place to be. It's been lovely hearing people talk about it, lovely seeing what's going on in the chat. And I really look forward to working with those of you who are still here, and to keeping in touch with those of you who aren't over the next few years, whilst I am in the post of Vice Master. So thank you, Catherine.
Thank you very much indeed, Diana. And of course, Diana has only recently stepped down as Dean of the Clinical School of Medicine. And I think it was wonderful to end this series of talks by reminding us, Diana, of, while we absolutely should be celebrating what we have achieved, there is still further for us to go. So thank you very much for that, Diana. We now have the opportunity for question and answer from the many of you who have attended. And Kate, I think you're going to curate the Q&A session. So without further ado, over to you.
the first question was way back from the beginning when Margie was speaking, and it was Judith who asked whether anyone remarked when you matriculated that you were in fact the first woman, when you had, I assume you had a similar ceremony to the one we run these days in the chapel, welcoming all the new students. Was it commented on that you were the first woman?
I don't think there was a ceremony, but there was no trouble about being reminded that I was the first woman student. No, people were curious. Who is this lay woman? I mean, the place still had a lot of priests studying throughout the university that were there. It had other people too, but it was, I was interesting, and I'm friendly. I mean, and they were very friendly to me. I mean, that whole hospitality business, and making sure I, got to see a rugby match so I would understand it. I'd never caught on very clearly with cricket, but I was introduced to English life actually, as well as to the college life. But people were glad I was there. I felt it was normal somehow. So that's one of the places where I try to think back. I have 3 older brothers. Where I went to college, there were like 1/3 of the students were women. This was at Stanford University here in the Bay Area in California. And so, I mean, one of the things about being just a third, I mean, they had a limit on how many women they would accept. And the women that were there, we all thought this is a good thing because we have a cushion of people who maybe aren't as accomplished as we are, so that we're not going to be too far down the pecking order in the academic life. But no, anyway, I was definitely, it just was part, but it wasn't a fuss thing. I don't know. I think the big thing at St Edmunds when I was there was that community of people, including its friends and all the various people who were members of various colleges at the university. There was this vision of an ecumenical institute, a full college at Cambridge. So it was Vatican II, which in the Roman Catholic Church was absolutely a huge revolution, and lots of possibilities for lay people, men and women. Well, at St Edmunds, they were very much aware of this new vision of church, and it included having women count, and certainly the Protestant churches were way ahead of the Roman Catholic Church. They were then and perhaps also now, but the fact that women could do these things was more acceptable in that setting, whereas in the Roman Catholic setting, you were studying for priesthood, you were a guy. So it was enough around 1969 when I came, and the council was from 1962 to 1965. So there was an environment there if you happened to be interested in it and paying attention. But yes, I got a lot of invitations, for tea, and so did my friend Anita Pampush, who was doing research and living at St Edmunds, and we were good friends, and everybody was very kind to both of us.
Brilliant, thank you, Margie. Another question has come through for Catherine, the Master. As the first female Master of the College, what are your 3 greatest hopes for the future of women?
Well, Jill, thank you very much for the question. I'm going to be slightly stingy, and I'm only going to give you one. But I think the one that I'm going to give you has so much that we need to do for it to become a reality that in many ways it is 3. And that is a future in which it is as usual for a woman to be Master of St Edmunds, a woman to be a senior professor, a woman to be Prime Minister, a woman to be Dean of the Clinical School of Medicine, as it is for a man to do those roles. And I think that's the really important thing. Being the first is an important milestone. It shows that it is possible. Hopefully it inspires others to follow you. But the point is that it shouldn't be the first. It shouldn't be exceptional. And I think that's what I really hope for women, that in 50 years' time, we won't even need to notice that a woman is taking on a leadership role. And I think language is often one of the most powerful ways of envisioning this. You put master in inverted commas. Obviously, there are women who would prefer to have a gender neutral term or maybe a feminized term. But I think so many of us who move into traditionally male roles have become very, very comfortable with taking on a role that might traditionally be an epithet only for a man. What I think is much more culturally interesting is something like when the first man leads Girton, will they be as equally comfortable being called the mistress? And if not, what does that say about our society? And I think that's the point that I would like us to be at in 50 years' time, where men and women, and the fact that you're a man or a woman or however you identify, is not relevant. What is relevant is your competence for the role that you are doing. Jane, did you have a question? Do feel free to pose it.
Oh, sure I do. It has to do with that igniting conversation and opening doors. And my question was, how can we leverage this community of women and men, our St. Edmunds advantage, so to speak, or our St. Edmunds unity in a way that is tangible, actionable, and is it going forward from this time of talking together? I certainly felt that after meeting with Jane, Lucio and Paul and some of the other people on that other little event. It was just so refreshing. And as a result, I've got some books on my desk that have been sent to me. It's a lively community, and I would love to see ways in which we can leverage it without burdening people.
Jane, I think there would be a desire from everyone to harness the energy behind this and that passion and commitment that we've seen from so many. If you have any ideas, please do let us know. I was also struck in your 50 years of women blog by, I'm going to get the probably mispronounce the word, but Wakotoan that you work on with the Indigenous Cree community, that sense in their language of enabling and working together. And I wonder if there are any lessons from that you could share with us today that you think we could take forward at St Edmunds.
Oh, I will be so honored to do that. I have worked with Cree in a very intimate way for more decades than that. Even when I was a little girl, once I was in a bus depot and my parents thought I was lost, and I was in the washroom and talking with some Native women. I didn't even know that at the time, and they gave me a hand-beaded pair of moccasins to pin on my coat. So I've always had this linking. And just this morning, I got a call from one of the Indigenous elders. We have, by listening to one another and expanding the paths of trust between Native or Indigenous and non-Native and newcomer immigrants into our region of Alberta. Okay, so we have been able to accomplish some incredible things that are transformative. And when I say community engagement, I mean people engagement at the deepest level. It's been a way of starting to turn around some of the difficulties over in the Indigenous reserve because of matters of alienation and the reserve system and all of that. But to go past that and really dig and work for the good. We were honored as a region to be selected to host the Lieutenant Governor of Alberta Arts Awards, which, as a representative of the Queen, who's having some difficulties of her own these days, and I feel for her, that discipline to break through and find our common ways of understanding one another, rather than insisting on who's right or whose institutions are right, but the power of history, the power of culture. Yes, the Wakotoan working together. It's a word, and you used the language concept, Catherine, a word that we now are using amongst non-native, native, and it fuels us. We put our indigenous, or not ours, we put indigenous people first in the things that we do, their rituals, their traditions. It's just made such an enormous difference in terms of peace and energy and outpouring of good stuff. So I could go on long about that, but I really believe it. And I believe that that's what we've done in St. Edmunds, is work together.
Thank you, Jane. I've got a question for Abby, asking, what do our current students most need to learn in order to empower others for the future?
Thank you. I think the first thing would be to just be comfortable with your own story and with your own journey, I would say. You don't get to empower others or make any really great impact if you're divorced from who you really are and why you're doing what you're doing. So I think it's that first thing of just being comfortable with who you are and your story, your journey, and also at the same time trying to, you know, learn who others are in their own context, and not try to make clones of your ideas or of your experience, but to kind of help people blossom by understanding who they are and where they are going as well. So I think we do that a lot here. We listen, we speak to one another. I know COVID has been a really dramatic time. There's not been as much engagement. Like, I came in the lockdown season, so it's not been as engaging as it should be. But in the little opportunities I've had to meet with students, to glean from seminars or events, it's always been that culture of listening in, but also sharing our real experience and transferring that knowledge as may be necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. And I've had a couple of, there's been quite a theme running through the chat, and some Maria has just posed in the Q&A box about the idea of kind of sort of sharing contact details and kind of forming some sort of network. So as a follow-up, somebody in my team will send something round for those of you who are willing to share your contact details with one another. We have also recorded this session, so if you wanted to share it within your networks for others who weren't actually able to make it live, that would be great. And you know, if there's enough interest in having some sort of St Edmunds women's network, that's definitely something that we can try and support in the development office. And we've got a question come through from Jordan. You gave us a fantastic framework and you've moved between different fields. What would your advice be for the college?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, like, from my personal experience, one of the things that was difficult was trying to see, you know, other options and other ways of broadening your horizons and your education, and especially in medicine, which is very, you know, it's quite a predetermined track. You kind of know where you're going to be in 3, 5, 8 years time, and perhaps doing things like this, giving women opportunities to showcase their individual stories, and realizing that there's not one right way of doing things, that every experience and track that you might take is equally valid. And I think kind of building on what Abby had said about trying to help people blossom, something that really helped me was having really great role models, but also having really great mentors who actually really invested time and energy into caring about me and caring about my career. And I think in our quest to try and make it, you know, as common for women to be in these sorts of high positions as men, it's important for those women that do end up breaking through the ranks to kind of, you know, hold a hand down to those women coming up behind them. And sharing your story can help to, you know, empower others to go for something that they might not have thought that they could achieve.
Thank you. Gemma, hello, Gemma Simmons, has put something in the Q&A box, not a question so much, but reminding me that at Newnham College they have a wonderful scheme of mentoring of recent graduates and current students being mentored by former students. And that's certainly something we'd love to try and develop here at St Edmunds. We don't quite have the same volume of former students quite yet, but that's something that we'd love to be able to do to kind of create networks, both with our current members and our past members. Thank you, Gemma. Oh, a question for Regan. What are your plans and hopes for after you graduate?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, after I graduate, I am planning actually to stay in Cambridge. I've received a position at in a lab to do a postdoc, so I'll be staying around for a couple more years, which is really exciting. And yeah, I'm happy to be staying in Cambridge because I definitely feel like there is some more to be doing here, especially in the community. Since we kind of lost this year in that sense with COVID, but that will be great. And beyond that, I'm aspiring to be an academic in clinical neurosciences. And I feel like I sound a bit like a broken record here, but you know, I just really do look forward to being able to help other people to essentially achieve their goals, and like Jordan kind of mentioned as well, put that hand down to other people, both men and women, and anybody who needs it, to help them to find their path in the same way that people have put that hand down for me all along the way. So yeah, thanks.
I just wanted to say from my perspective, as the Master said, it was kind of a really agonizing last minute decision this time last year to cancel the women's dinner, which members of my team had put a huge amount of work into, and we are incredibly grateful to those of you who were kind of scheduled to attend the in-person dinner. And I think as soon as it's safe to do so, we'd love to be able to, although we've gone some way in replicating the panel aspect of that event, we'd love to be able to bring kind of past, current and future Eddie's women together when we're able to dine in hall again.
It was very big for me when I couldn't have lunch with you, and I was at your hospitality. I was going to be able to stay at the college for a few days before the dinner, which was going to be my big chance to just be in the woodwork and with the daffodils, but to hear and see the community now in action. So I really regret that big time. So anyway, I'm glad to hear what you're saying about maybe sometime when we're all free again, we can do that.
So we've had one question come through, which might be a nice one to end on, which comes from Fiona Costello, one of our members of our fellowship. What does International Women's Day mean to the panelists? Those of you who haven't already sort of given your thoughts, what does International Women's Day mean to you?
For me, it means a sense of connectedness with the women who I have worked with in Africa, in Asia, in the Middle East, and here at home. And I feel that it is unique for people who have degrees like we have to feel such an ongoing part of that community. I mix with lots of people who've been to universities, but what we have is very unique. It's sisterhood, it's community. I really think that we have something to contribute from that, and I would like to be part of exploring what that thing is.
I think of it as good liturgy. It's a lifting up of, at all times and all places, the reality of the spirit of women in the world. And it is good to lift up, to look, and it may seem odd at the beginning. Well, why is somebody have an inner mother? Don't we know that? You know, well, anyway, I think it's good to start with these gestures which show a value and an importance, and it's part of the invitation to participate.
If I could go next. Okay, so International Women's Day for me is all about reflecting on the progress that has been made for women in today's society. And I'm thinking about that globally because my work experience before now was with the United Nations, and everything we thought about was on a global scale. There's so much progress that has been made, but I think it's also a day to reflect on what more needs to be done. We're here today, but there's a future group of women that are going to join St Edmunds tomorrow. And all we can do is to work harder to create a space that nurtures that potential and those graces that those women will bring to the college, as well as those that are already around us now. But I think it's a day to think back from where we're coming from and to think forward to where we're going to. This is my second Women's Day event today, by the way. Earlier today, I had another meeting with some young women, and we were reflecting on the women that have impacted us the most, who've made us, make those bold choices and move to a new country and do all those daring things. And a lot of us had to talk about our mothers or our grandmothers who paid a really tough price at a time when women weren't as recognized or as allowed or permitted to be, the way we are now. And so in reflecting about that, we thought about what sacrifices we might make for the next generation to make it even easier for them to actually, do what they feel passionate about without any restrictions. So for me, it's that backward and forward thinking.
I have to totally agree with what Abby's just said, and I think I was just writing down what it represents to me, and I think I wrote pretty much what you've said of celebrate the achievements of women, remind ourselves of the work that still needs to be done to increase access to opportunities, and I just I totally agree with everything that you shared there.
Okay, so I also agree completely with the other panelists. There's this sense of global sisterhood that I think because of these special days that is created between us and the platforms that we get to meet each other. Abby just said she's had 2 events today and so on. On each platform, you get to meet different women, talk about the issues that you've faced or your stories or listen to theirs. And I think there's the one thing that I find here, which is common, and especially because I have had the opportunity to interact with so many women with so many diverse backgrounds, both because of my national and international status, rural and cosmopolitan areas and so on. Leaving aside the systemic, cultural and organizational issues that sometimes make us feel that women do need, we need help for women, or we need to have these conversations more often, or reasons why women take career breaks or end their journeys, professional journeys, or what you realize because of this day, because of these events, is that the challenges faced by women are common across the globe. And that itself, I think, is reason enough to feel that you're not alone. And so it's really incredibly fantastic to have a global sisterhood by way of the Women's Day. That's my take on it.
Hey, can we put this down on our calendars for next year, Master Catherine and company?
Actually, Geeta, that I would just pick up on something that I think you've all said, and that is that we do have to remember that there are places in the world where women do not have the opportunity to even think about this stuff. And I think it's terribly important that should be part of what International Women's Day is about. It's about celebrating what we've achieved, and it's fantastic just listening to people's stories and listening to people's stories from around the world. But there are places where that doesn't happen, and there are still male colleagues in my profession who don't get it, and who think. I once actually left a committee, part of the Royal College of Physicians committee, and I actually resigned over some of the stuff about where we were going to run the MRCP exam, because we should not be doing that. We should not be making money in places where women do not have anywhere near the same opportunities. So I think we need to celebrate everything that we should celebrate, but we should also remember there's still an awful lot of work to do. And hopefully, particularly looking at you young folk, that's your job for the future, to sort the rest out, please.
Any of the other panelists have any final reflections on that question? Jane Lucio, I wonder if you did.
From a very early age, encourage the girls to have courage and self-belief, and for us to reassess. So much of our lives are of self-awareness, but fixing other people's problems. And it's something you can't measure, you can't record. It's an instinct, and taken for granted by some. But it is this looking at yourself and helping others to believe in themselves from a very early age will help.
Does anyone else have any reflections before we wrap up, or any final questions? No, in which case, Jordan, I feel you lay down the gauntlet of setting things in trios. I'm not sure I'm going to do it as well as you did, but I think if there are three things that we've taken away from this, and there is so much more, the first is that the importance of context, whether that's an historical context, whether that's a local context, or very importantly, the global context in which we find ourselves thinking about the space that women occupy on the 8th of March, but also the other 363 or 4 days of the year. The second is that we need to be thankful to our college and the people who made St Edmunds the place that it is today, and that while we should congratulate those of you who have played such an important role in getting us to the point where we can all enjoy what the various experiences and opportunities that you've heard today, that we cannot rest, and that there is more that needs to be done. Inequities and injustices do still remain, and that as we thank those who have gone before us and shaped who we are, we also need to hope that in 50 years' time, there will be more to celebrate. And as Regan has said, whether it's putting our hand down or out, that we may each, in our small way, have played a part in the reflections that people have in 50 years' time of an even better, brighter, stronger college that we will be celebrating then. So the final thing I want to say is a really big thank you. Thank you to all of you who have done so much. Thank you very much to our panelists. And also thank you very much to our development office, Kate and Kerry in particular, for all the practicalities, pragmatics that have been a year in the gestation, but we finally made it here today. So thank you very much indeed.